For our next question, Heba H asks, if we put "and" at the beginning of a sentence, should we put a comma after it? Heba, this is really a wonderful question, and I'm very glad you asked it. Often when we're speaking, we might say something like, and come to think of it, I'd like to go too. We put a pause after the word "and" as we formulate our thoughts to come up with what it is we want to add to whatever it is we were previously saying. And Marie herself in the Basic Cozy Punctuation course talks about how one of the ways we can check our writing for commas is to notice where we naturally want to put a pause. Often, not always, but often, at those places where we pause to make our meaning clear are also places where a comma can help make our meaning clear. But let's look at this particular question a little more closely. Let me pull up an example sentence onto our whiteboard. Give me a second to pull it up. Okay, so here is an example sentence. And often when we begin a sentence with the word "and," it's coming after a series of sentences that have introduced some topic. So imagine we're making plans for some event. Maybe it's an event with a number of different homeschoolers coming together to share creative projects that they have done over the past several months and to show it off to their friends, to the other families. And suppose we're talking about that, and then we come to a sentence where we say, and with all the work we have to do, we won't have any time to sleep. So first thing you can see is that this "and" is linking this sentence into a series of a longer series of sentences. But of course, if we were giving a pause after the "and," you can imagine somebody saying this out loud, and they might say, and with all the work we have to do, we won't have any time to sleep. And that might make sense out loud. However, almost all of the time, it is not necessary, and in fact is not advisable, to place a comma after the "and" at the beginning of a sentence, because we can simply say and launch into the sentence. In fact, many times we can not even have the "and" at the beginning of the sentence, and the sentence will be just fine. If it feels important to have the "and" there, put the "and" there without a comma. Now, there is one exception, which is a little bit more advanced a topic, but let me introduce it here for those who are interested in it. I'll add one more sentence. So here is a second sentence that begins with the word "and." The one place where sometimes people might think a comma makes sense is if you want to insert a statement into a sentence between the "and" and the rest of the sentence. So here's the sentence. Here's an example. And although the principal didn't like it, all of the students did. So again, we're coming out of some context. Maybe we're talking about some plan to put on a school play or to put on a fundraiser that the principal for some reason was slightly hesitant about, but the students were very enthusiastic about. Notice that the core sentence here is, and all of the students did. And if we just wrote the sentence, and all of the students did, we would not need a comma after the "and." But notice now that we've inserted another phrase, in this case, a subordinate clause, although the principal didn't like it. And because we're inserting that clause into the sentence, we could put a comma at the beginning and at the end of the clause to get "and, although this principal didn't like it, all of the students did." So here's a case where it might make sense to add the comma after the "and," but for the specific reason that we're adding an additional phrase or an additional clause into the sentence. Now, that said, when we enter into the realm of these more, we could say, advanced uses of commas, we've actually entered into something that goes a bit beyond grammar to the realm of what is called style. Style refers to the consistency of punctuation and the usage of words in a printed book, in a printed text. And in fact, there are several schools of punctuation upheld by different areas of publishing. So, for instance, there's an entire school called the Chicago School, which is used in literary publishing as well as in academic publishing. And there's also something called the Associated Press style for journalistic, so for newspapers, journalism, the work of journalists. And in these schools, we'll find that there are some schools which advocate using as few commas as necessary. And of course, such a school would say, we don't even need that comma after the and in that second example. Then there are other schools that say, let's put in a comma every place we need it. And by the time you get up to this level of style, the question of style, along with the question of grammar, then you too may want to enter into the discussions of punctuation and style in the different schools of their usage. However, for the time being, I stand by those two suggestions that I've suggested to you, and I commend you for your question because it shows an attentiveness, an ear, as well as an eye for language and how we would punctuate a sentence that begins with the word and. If you have any further questions, feel free to follow up, and all good wishes to you.